We're going to get started. Thank you so much for coming. We're here to talk about the changes to our school that are upcoming in the coming years. Our superintendent, Carrie Callahan, really wanted to be here. She was here on Monday. She is now a proud grandma as of just a few hours ago, and so she needed to go support her daughter in that. So we're going to hear from Jen Paladin, our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, and Mike Mall, our Assistant Superintendent of Personnel Services, and they're going to go through the same information. They were at that meeting on Monday. They've been in every conversation about this, so they should be able to answer any questions that Carrie would have been able to answer for you. So please give her that grace of being a first-time grandma and going and seeing her grandbaby. I'll turn over to Jen.
Perfect. Hi everyone. We are also going to have Lindsay take some notes about any questions that come up today. Normally I would be sitting in the back taking notes, but we're up here, so I can't do that. So we're going to try to capture anything that comes up today so we can be sure to address it if we don't have answers in the future. So Mike's actually going to get us started, so here we go.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you joining us this evening for information that we can provide on what we know is a challenging conversation. We know there's a tremendous amount of pride and love behind First Street School, and any kind of decision like this isn't made lightly, and that's a little bit about what we want to talk about tonight is the why behind the decision. I'm not going to have the thought that that's going to satisfy everybody that, okay, this is great, but we do want to let you know that this wasn't made capriciously, and then a little bit about what the potential implementation of this might look like. So what are we going to cover this evening? We are going to talk a lot about enrollment at first, because it is our growing enrollment that has made the necessity of some difficult decisions come to the forefront, and the why that First Street Elementary is being considered for a repurposing. What are the possible things that we're looking at, and timelines for when these things will be implemented, what it means for students, staff, and the family, and then there will be a Q&A opportunity as well. And really last night, that was where a lot of the time took place, and we're absolutely more than happy to stay here for as long as needed to answer any questions that might arise. And I went the wrong way. So the last 25 years, okay, when you look at that enrollment, the bar graph almost doesn't even do it justice. Over there, all the way on the left, you're hanging out about 3,000, just over 3,000 kids. And here we are in 24, 25 of last year, we're right about the 8,000 cusp. So that is in 25 years, more than double the enrollment. That's staggering by any growth metric. That's going back to including when Lincoln literally was the fastest growing city in the country. For a point of perspective, 1992, when I graduated from Lincoln High School, the enrollment at Lincoln High School was just over 450, 500 kids. When I was last principal there, and that was back in 2021, I was at 2,300 kids. So that's a microcosm of the enrollment that our district has gone through. So it's no exaggeration to say we've doubled the numbers. It's a literal truth in this case. And since that tremendous growth started, we have obviously added facilities, and First Street was one of the ones that was first added. I remember it vividly as my second year teaching. We had District Day right at this site, and here's First Street School, and a remarkable temporary school site to be a Band-Aid as we look at longer permanent structures that Lincoln will be able to utilize. So First Street was always presented, although that message got lost obviously along the way, but when it was first put together, it was always with the intent that it would not be a permanent building, hence why there are no permanent buildings on this campus. It is mostly portable, some of which were already being used prior to its opening. Obviously, we did a lot to make it have the appearance and feel of a more permanent structure. After that, starting particularly in 2004, we're almost opening a school a year, as you can see there, between Toll Bridges Elementary, Foskett Ranch, TBM, Lincoln Crossing. And then there's a big gap between Lincoln Crossing and Scott Lehman Elementary. You might remember that thing 2007, 2008 called the housing market crash. And that put a huge pause on the other two schools that were long planned and even kind of like, hey, these are gonna happen. And then the housing market happened and those schools were postponed for a long time, but finally did open in 2020 and 2021. Those two schools having a considerable amount of money coming from some bond funds. Okay, so that's the construction that has happened to meet the needs of our growing district. So looking ahead, the growth is not going to stop. And that's really a double-edged sword. More students does mean for the district, that's how we get money as a district. We're funded by how many students we have and how often they attend school. That's the major source of our funding model. So it can be very easy to think more students, more money. But we aren't quite funded enough that more students equal enough money to build new schools. That is not the funding model. That's probably one of the biggest misconceptions that's out there. More kids, you get another 1,000 kids, then they clearly have enough money to buy another school. We wish that was the case. That just isn't the funding model. School funding for building primarily comes through developer fees. And we do have developers that pay fees, but it doesn't come anywhere near close enough to do the builds, particularly for middle schools and high schools, which is why if you go back to that previous slide, you see particularly 12 Bridges High School and even the modernization of Lincoln High School. Those are funded by bonds because the developer fees just don't cover what we need to house all the kids that we have. So the growth is going to continue. If you look at 3031, the enrollment is estimated to be 9,250 something kids. So that's another 1,000 kids more than we have right now in less than 5 years. Which brings up the interesting question, where are we going to put them all? And that is what we're challenged with right now. We have more growth coming, as you can see. The various villages that are around. Villages 1, 5, and 7 are either under construction or about to begin building construction. And again, these can provide developer fees, but it's rare that those developer fees equal shiny brand new schools to the extent that we need. Okay? There's a little calculus on the bottom for you. How do we generate an estimation of how many more kids we'll have? Based on our history, there is 17,280 units that are projected to be built in those villages, and I can't answer where this number came from, but a typical unit provides 0.58 kids per unit. So it's not 1-to-1 or 2-to-1, it is 0.58 in our reality. So we project that out, how many units are in the village, all those units times 0.58. In the next 20 years, we project over 10,000 more students. So clearly that's more schools on the horizon. No matter how much we repurpose the schools we already have, we couldn't house all those kids. And I believe our next school already is relatively set for what it's going to be in Village 7, if I'm not mistaken. That's a K-8 that's going to be servicing that. But again, that took a lot of negotiations with the Village 7 developers to make that come to fruition. And they were relatively generous in what they're willing to do. But that took a lot of talking. Not every village works with us that well. This graph here shows the room we have currently left. Okay? And the green is the site capacity, the orange is the current enrollment. And if you look at the gaps there, we have 724 students space in elementary, 363 in middle, and 744 students in high schools. That would be the maximum build out we could do. And that would even include, I believe, installing more portables just to make that happen. We don't have all those buildings in place, but the footprints exist that we can make that happen. So that's 7, 20, 14, 15, 16. That's going to be pretty soon that we're outside that capacity. And when we look at school capacities, we recently worked with a demographer, is that the correct word, to kind of look at, okay, if your schools were maxed out of kids, where are you in percentage of enrollment? The next to last column where you start to see what look like yellows and greens and blues, that is the 24-25 enrollment, and then the percentage of capacity being used at each of those sites. Once you get past 80%, that is considered to be a school of concern because you're starting to run out of room. And if you look at last year, many of our sites were at concern or approaching concern, with a couple of exceptions at Foskett and Sheridan. When you look at 12 Bridges Elementary, that's already not just a concern, it's whoa, what the heck are we going to do there? And if you project that to the 2030, 2031 enrollments, those numbers do nothing but go up, where almost every single site is a site of concern. There's a Sheridan at 171% enrollment. That is based on a realignment glitch that we're not going to really dive into, but if you, how is a school by 171%? That's a pretty nuanced situation. But look at First Street School, it's at 74 and 79, but the key issue there is Glen Edwards, particularly middle school. If you look down there, they're at 77% as of last year, and it goes up to 95% in 3031. Toll Bridges Middle School, already at 88%, goes up to 105%. So our middle schools are where we're the most bursting at the seams with the smallest room for more students. So that's why we really had to focus based on the information from the demographers. What do we need to do to try to fix this? Okay. And that is where I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Aladdin.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. So the first thing that I want to share before we get into some of the details is that this decision about the closure of First Street School has nothing to do with First Street School. It has everything to do with the location of First Street School as it relates to the needs in our community, specifically at Glen Edwards Middle School, which, as you know, is adjacent to First Street School. And I would be remiss without acknowledging, and we heard this loud and clear at our parent meeting on Monday, just about the community, the leadership, the teachers, the sense of pride in the school and community, and we recognize that it's really difficult to face this decision. We don't take it lightly. We want you to know that if the middle school that we needed support in was next to 12 Bridges Elementary, we'd be having the same conversation. This isn't about First Street School. First Street's just where it happens to land. And we're also really thoughtful about what can we do to support our families and our community and our students as we go through this transition to figure out how to make this land as best as it possibly can, even though it's going to be icky no matter what we do. So just know that's our commitment to you. Two other things I'm going to share before we dive into this is that, one, you should know that every teacher and staff member at First Street School will land in a position somewhere in our district. So no one's going to lose a job because of this. Everyone's going to have a landing spot. The details of that are pretty complicated and are tied up deeply in our contract. But we've actually gone through things like this before as we've opened new schools, and so we actually have a system by which we can get people into new jobs. So just know that everyone will land somewhere in our district if they choose to. The other thing you should know, and this is a big question that came up last time, is if my student's in GATE, what's going to happen with my GATE student? And you should know that the kids that started in grade 3 with GATE this year will be able to finish through grade 5 with GATE. And so that's not something that we need to that's something we're thoughtful about. We want to be sure that our kids are able to finish through grade 5 with their GATE program. So I just wanted to put those two things out there at the forefront because those were two big questions we got last time. So what's being proposed? So as Mike alluded to, we are really facing a capacity issue at the middle school level, and there's really a lot of need and desire for us to create space for middle school students so we can offer the wide range of programming and classes and experiences that our middle school students need. And as a result of the need for middle school space and the proximity of First Street School to Glen Edwards, and the demand that's going to be placed on Glen Edwards in the short future, in part because of development and also because of some boundary changes that are going to be taking place. We're going to be closing First Street School and repurposing the school site to be an extension of the Glen Edwards campus. What that's going to look like exactly is still kind of to be determined, but that's what the proposal is. And like I mentioned, there's also some boundary change proposals that are coming related to Lincoln Crossing Elementary School. Currently, students at Lincoln Crossing attend 12 Bridges Middle and then 12 Bridges High, and part of this proposal is to change those boundaries so that students that attend Lincoln Crossing will attend Glen Edwards and then Lincoln High School instead of 12 Bridges Middle and 12 Bridges High School. And that's going to help ease that pressure on the 12 Bridges Middle School and high school communities. As you notice, those schools are also at or above capacity now and in the near future. So that is what's being proposed. No decisions have been finalized, and we'll talk about when those decisions will be made, but that's what we're proposing. This is the current boundary map, and it's very difficult to see, but First Street's kind of right here in the middle, and then all the other schools are around. So this is what things currently look like. And one of the things that's really challenging is, Mike mentioned that there's all these new homes that are going in, all these new people coming in, but it's not happening right here. It's happening on the perimeter of our community, and that's one of the reasons why we're having this impact on our enrollment, and that we're not seeing that same impact here at First Street School. What we anticipate will happen is the students that attend First Street School will be going to different schools, and the new boundary will be drawn for the First Street community that's right along 5th Street. And students that live to the north of 5th Street will be attending Foskett Ranch Elementary School, and those that are south of 5th Street, I think I have those directionals right, will be attending Creekside Oaks Elementary School. Both Foskett and Creekside Oaks have tremendous capacity in their classroom space to absorb more students. Foskett Ranch has hundreds of seats available and the capacity to expand their campus further, as does Creekside Oaks Elementary School. So that's why those boundaries were drawn and chosen. So that's where the new boundary line will fall for students that live in the area of First Street School. Ms. Callahan mentioned last meeting that the enrollment at First Street School is around 200-ish of students that are from the First Street community. Do I have that right, Lindsay? Yep. So around 200 kiddos from this area, and then probably 70 to 90-ish that are coming from GATE programs to fill out the rest of the 3 classes we have. So the community at First Street is actually pretty small. It's the smallest elementary school aside from Sheridan that we have. And so the students will be divided, and this boundary was recommended because it makes that division more equitable. So about half will go up to Foskett and about half will go to Creekside Oaks. So I alluded to this already, but why First Street School? And as Mike alluded to, we are growing rapidly. There are thousands of new homes that are coming on board, and we are projecting another 17,000 when the city reaches full capacity, and we've reached middle school capacity, or we're nearing those limits at both GEMS and 12 Bridges Middle School. Mike mentioned that there's a new school coming on board in Village 7. That's a TK8 school, and that school is specifically there to support the students that are living in that new community that's being built out right now off of Moore Road. So that school will support those students and not students from other parts of our district. So First Street School is in a bit of a declining enrollment, and the campus was designed to be temporary from the outset, even though it certainly feels like a very permanent home for many people who are part of this community. And the district believes through the research they've done that this is really a cost-effective solution. And one of the reasons why it's cost-effective is Mike mentioned the funding formula for schools. In order to unlock access to dollars, in order to make improvements to GEMS, one way we can do that is to expand GEMS. And once we close First Street and we're able to expand GEMS to take on new enrollment, we're going to be able to then access dollars to make those improvements. We can't make those improvements without closing First Street and expanding Glen Edwards. And that might seem kind of wonky. Those are just the way the rules work, and I'm not an expert in those rules, but I know that that's the facts of the matter, and so we just want to be clear about that. So there will be some changes, financial implications of this change, and those will be paid for by funds that are available because we closed the school and work to expand GEMS. Okay. So a big question is, when? When does this happen? Well, it's not going to happen tomorrow, that's for sure. What we do anticipate is that our school board will be taking some action on this item, probably at some point in September or October. But between now and then, we anticipate there being a variety of surveys that go out to our communities, both here at First Street School and other schools that are impacted, just to get an assessment of what the community is most interested in. We have a couple of options. One is to simply close First Street, like just pull the Band-Aid and close it and be done. Or another option could be to do that in a phased rollout model, and we're not quite sure yet which model is the best way to approach this. There's pros and cons on either side. We'll be coming to our community for more input on that, so we can decide what makes the most sense for our families and our students in our community. So there will be some board decisions happening at some point this fall, but there will be absolutely no changes at First Street School, at minimum, at the earliest, until the 2027-2028 year, and potentially even later, as we try to figure out if there's a way for us to manage things with this new TKA opening and in all these different competing factors. How can we line this up best to have the least impact on students and families? At the earliest, the change would be in 27-28, but Carrie definitely is anticipating that could be even later. And again, our commitment is to be sure our GATE students have a chance to finish their GATE program. I already kind of spoke to this a little bit, but the current proposal, the original proposal that was shared at a board meeting back in June, was the idea that we would not take on new enrollment in TK and kindergarten starting in 27-28, and that students would just continue to kind of roll up through 5th grade, and the school would gradually close over time, right? So we would start with, we would have a few classes, and then one fewer, and then one fewer, and eventually would maybe have only a 5th grade class. So So that was the original proposal, and that's still an option. But we also have heard loud and clear from families that that might not be the best option. If you have kids that are little and kids that are older, like how do you navigate that? You got kids in 2 schools, like those are all real concerns that we want to be addressing. So another option could be that students would all transfer to their new boundary at one time. We could also think about younger students transitioning while older students stay. And then we would always want to offer priority transfer for siblings to keep families together if that was a need, and we do that through our intra-district transfer process. We do that currently at other schools. So the how is a little bit fuzzy, and I think that can be really unsettling for people to be like, what do you mean you're closing my school and you're not telling me how that's going to happen? We're not, and the reason we're not is we want to get input from our community to be sure we're making the best choice for most families that are impacted. All right. So who does this impact? So obviously it impacts students. They're going to be reassigned to either Creekside Oaks or Fosket Ranch Elementary School. Our staff will be transferred to other places in the district. That's both certificated teaching staff and classified staff as well. Everyone, including our administration, like everyone's going to land someplace, and we're going to make sure that that they have some voice and choice in that to the best of our capacity. No staff will lose jobs. And then we're also talking with families. One of the big things we've been hearing is about transportation, particularly for families that need to get up to Fosket, because that's a bit of a distance, crossing multiple major streets, and that's a little stressful for families. And I get that. I ran an elementary school, and traffic was insane. Like I totally get that. So that's something that we're thinking about, and how do we support that? Talking with our busing system, do we provide some busing potentially to support families from here to get up there? Lindsay started a super cool biking to school program. I think this week was the first. Today was the first day, and I saw the pictures and they were amazing. So like, can we take advantage of some of those structures? Do we provide more campus supervisor time to make sure kids have benchmarks along the way where adults have eyes on them? Those are all things we've got to figure out, but that's something that we're keenly aware of as a need that we need to address. All right, it's a whole lot of information, and I tend to talk pretty fast. Mike's better at that than I am. So at this point, that's the core information we wanted to share. This is being recorded. If it's good enough, then maybe it'll go online, and if not, Carrie will re-record it to her liking. We'll see what she decides to do. But we'd be happy to open it up to questions or comments or feedback. We do have a hard stop at 7 because we have a second presentation for our Spanish-speaking families, but Mike and I are happy to address any questions that are on your mind.
What's going to happen to the GATE program?
So the question was, what's going to happen to the GATE program? And the short answer is we're not totally sure yet. So the GATE program as it exists right now will continue all the way through grade 5. So kiddos that started this year will be able to finish through grade 5. We do anticipate GATE testing second graders this year across the district like we always do. But we've been talking about how GATE might look different. Approximately 200 students are identified as GATE and high achieving when we do GATE testing. Only about 20 to 25 of them actually come to First Street School. There's a very large need to support our GATE students across the whole district. So we're trying to evaluate how might we accomplish that if there's not a core program. I don't want to say for certain, but I feel pretty confident that there will not be a GATE program at a school site when this all wraps up, but we will be sure all students who are in the GATE program currently continue through 5th grade. Go ahead.
So will there, just
Okay,
process
that's fine.
what
I
you
get
said.
it. Yeah.
So the current students will go through, but then after this cohort, though, it sounds like
It's uncertain. And I don't anticipate that there will be, but it's uncertain. That's a conversation we're still having, trying to figure out how we're going to navigate that and how we can best meet the needs of all of our students and not just the kiddos that choose to come to First Street for the GATE program.
right. I think there's various factors, right? That go into
100%.
that, but
Yes.
some people choose
Yes.
not to come here for various
A
different
wide variety of reasons.
I just would hope that there's a consideration for those students that are in that program or that would be testing into that program.
For sure.
Because they're significant. Many of us here
Are for GATE
parents
families,
or parents, and that's like why I'm here. is
You're in
to
jail.
ensure that other future children have that opportunity. It's like my daughter and my son benefited from that program.
We have plans to meet with our GATE team that currently exists in Lindsay and other people that are interested in GATE and high achieving programs to try to figure out what we can do as a district to try to provide that same high quality enrichment and opportunity for all students across all of our sites. What that looks like, if I told you, I'd be lying to you, so I'm not going to try to pretend like I've got a master plan. I don't. But our plan is to make sure that all students across our district have the opportunity for enrichment and those really valuable opportunities that our GATE and high achieving students benefit from. Yeah, stay tuned. And if you'd like to be a part of that, we'd love to have you be a part of that conversation. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. And I don't have a date or a time schedule, but we'll get some information out to families and particularly target our GATE families to say, if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, let's have a sit down and talk about what you value about this program and what works for you, and what might that look like if we were to try to replicate that differently at other school sites. I would love to have that conversation and see where we can go with that.
Sorry, just to clarify, because I don't think it's that there will be no GATE program of any kind anywhere, but it might not be like a magnet school that pulls GATE to one site. There might be GATE programs at all the sites. What they'll look like, will it be embedded in the classroom, will it be after school enrichment? Those are the unanswered questions, but there will be GATE programs of some sort to support the kids. I think we're confident on that. Just what it will look like is the big question mark.
Do you guys plan to offer the CARE program at both Creekside and Fosket?
For sure, care at COES already exists. In terms of Fosket, I think that'll be a determination based on what the entire population there looks like, but we're obviously going to have to expand our care at other sites if it's absorbing the care that's currently taking place here. So we know that we'll have to do that, whether that is something that also goes into, like, if Fosket doesn't have it, would qualifying families maybe go to Creekside, even if they are on the opposite side of Fifth Street? Those are things I think we'd have to be creative with, but for sure we will continue to offer and expand the care programs either at COES or add one at Fosket as needed. Fosket might be a challenge because they have a STAR program there, and where you would put the space for both of those programs at the same site would be a logistical challenge, but we'll find home for the care kids that have those services or would have had those services here. I feel confident in saying that.
As I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the reason that it's uncertain at Fosket is because CARE is a grant-funded program that it serves low-income communities, and so we would have to see where the thresholds lie as our students start to transition over there to see if they qualify for that, and then if they did qualify, I can't imagine that we would not put a program there.
Agreed.
What is the projected company that TK would at Liberty?
I believe 3031 is the 2930. Okay, so they did 3031 was her, but then they said optimistically 2930. So you're hearing on the record now that we're looking at 2930. This is our director of facilities, Mike Adele. So if anybody in this district knows the best timeline, it would be Mike. So 3031 is the latest. 2930 is a fair chance. Okay.
And I would say too, if you don't mind, that to that point, that we're really being thoughtful about when can that school open, like how quickly can we make that happen, and how does that fit into this big master plan so that we can make one massive change rather than just continue to pull the Band-Aid off over and over and over again. And that might be best for our students and for our teachers and for our administration to be able to have all the options available to them. So I think that part of the goal is to see how can we eke things along so that all the change happens at once. I think that's a priority that we're trying to focus on the best that we can. What else, Robin?
What school, as far as middle and high school, will Liberty be going to?
Say that one more time.
What middle school and high school will that school go to?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know.
It'll have its own middle school.
The middle school's embedded. This is a K-8. But the high school, do we have an answer to that?
Short-term answer and a long-term.
Okay, so go ahead.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Kathy Domenico. I'm actually the financial advisor for the school district, and have been working on the Liberty proposal. It's the short-term answer is it would likely be Lincoln High, but depending on the negotiations and the funding, they may have room at 12 Bridges if they'd be able to fund expansion. The long-term answer and the real answer is they would be attending the Village 5 high school. So in Village 5, a new high school would be constructed as part of that development project, and the students from Village 7 would be going to the Village 5 high school. But that's farther down the road.
Thanks, Kathy. And the Village 5 community, because we throw these numbers around, so Village 7 is the area off of Moore Road that's at the end of Ferrari Ranch, but Village 5 is the one that's out towards the school farm, Dowd Road, right? Is that correct?
From Nelson over.
From Nelson over to Dowd Road. So that's where there's a kind of a master plan for multiple more schools to go out there, including the new high school. Any other questions, Robin? Yeah. Great.
When can we expect to hear of, like, when we can help inform what the gate program looks like?
That's a great question. So our priority was to get through these parent meetings that we had Monday and today, and then next week on Monday and Tuesday we have similar sessions for the Lincoln Crossing community, and so we're going to get past those, and then we're going to start reaching out to create some focus groups and start talking to different populations about what's next, sending out some surveys. And remember, the timeline for the board to consider this is in September, October, so probably in the next, I would imagine within the next few weeks. For sure. And that'll probably come from me specifically, because that's part of my job is to figure all that out. Yes, go ahead.
If we go through with the phase-out plan, so there'll be 3 classes, basically, maybe 6 if you have duplicates of each other on this campus. So what will happen with the rest of the campus? Are they planning to already come into?
That's a great question. So if you didn't hear the question, and just for the benefit of the camera, the question was, if there's a slow kind of scale down of First Street School, like what's going to happen to the campus? How's that going to look? And what I would imagine that would look like, based on my conversation with Carrie, and tell me if you heard differently, if any of you heard differently, is that those classrooms would be that are remaining would be in a particular area of campus, and the area that's closest to GEMS would start to be repurposed or repositioned to benefit GEMS as they start to grow. So as I understand it, the idea is that some of the portables that are closest to GEMS are literally going to be like picked up and moved and turned around so that they face the campus, and that corner campus may become like a 6th grade area potentially. They would move the fence lines and expand the footprint of Glen Edwards while this school is still intact. And then as this school, if that's the model that we go with, as this school continues to shrink in size, then the portables can be picked up and moved to other locations to build the capacity that's necessary at other schools.
Someone add something else?
Just the initial thought is that the first things that would start coming over would not be students. They would be like those ancillary spaces that don't typically house students, like the after-school care office and that kind of thing, so that it's not impacting our day-to-day as we still have students on campus. And then they would start shifting students over once we got smaller and it was appropriate to change fence lines.
You mentioned about the change in the funding, and you know, if it goes towards Glen Edwards. If you did the phased approach, does that mean then the funding would also come in phased waves, or is that you would open it up immediately to certain?
Getting a lot of nonverbal feedback from you. Hand that over. There you
This is
go.
a semi-loaded question. So what it opens up is the ability to use development impact fees, developer fees, because you're expanding a school for classroom capacity. Developer fee restrictions, there are developer fees on account now. So the district actually has some developer fees on hand now that could be applied towards some of the initial improvements. And then developer fees come in on an annual basis, kind of regardless of what's necessarily happening here. So it's not necessarily one for one. As we shut down, we're going to get more developer fees. We actually have substantial developer fees now that we could then use. It would free up to improve these buildings as long as they're part of that middle school campus and we're creating capacity at the middle school level. So it's not necessarily opening up a future funding opportunity, it's opening up funds that we have now, and then as additional developer fees come in, we can also apply them to those improvements. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
so then the improvements that would be done here would be like making the facilities more upgraded and more permanent and all sorts of things that you would need, right?
Well, and these buildings were, frankly, when these went in 2000, these were not new portables. So portable classrooms have a useful life of about 20 years. I could stretch it to 25, but I think it's 20 years. So these buildings are more than 25 years old, and really, I mean, even to turn them around, I don't know, we're going to be able to just turn them around. I think there's going to be substantial improvements just to move the buildings. And it could end up with new facilities.
So this site was actually started. This site was actually started in 1992 to get ready for what those is developing. So this was a temporary school until that happened.
Yeah.
And then for a while, the school was a portion of it, not all the portables were here. What was here and put down was actually the district office for a while. And then in 2000, when things really started happening and we needed the school again, we moved the district office back to the temporary school until the rest of the schools could be built.
Thanks, Alex.
That's a great question. The funding stuff is really complicated and often a source of curiosity, and so I'm glad that you asked the question so we could clarify. Thank you.
So, and just on the camera, but I wanted to ask you about the CARE program. What is going to happen, because we're going to have the schools going to have less and less students every year. So what is going to happen with the CARE program? It's going to stay until the last group of students is leaving?
Yeah, I think that our plan is to be sure that we provide the same level of support for students and programs for students. However, this school ends up closing, whether it's all at once or in a phased approach. The logistics of like how do we do that and what does that look like? I'm just to be honest, I don't think we have those specific details, but I know that Carrie and our team are committed to being sure that students at First Street School have access to the same quality program they've had the whole time until the school is eventually closed, and then to transfer those same quality programs to the best of our ability to the new places where kids are going. Yeah, you bet. Okay, I counted 5 in my pocket. I feel like we're good. Okay, so teacher tricks. So we are going to hang out. We're going to be here until 7 when we have a second presentation that's happening. We're happy to hang out and answer more